Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I am really excited about tonight's Let's Talk. For those of you who don't know, I'm Mary Helen Reeker. I'm the Executive Director for the Autism Society Greater Cincinnati. And one of the things we do are bring you these monthly educational programs to talk about things that are important to you. And one of the things that we felt was really timely was to talk about remote learning. And I'm particularly pleased tonight to bring you this in partnership with the Regional Autism Advisory Council and the training committee that is a part of that. So thank you so much to RAC and Tapia for agreeing to co-host this with me and really talk about something that is timely and relevant here today. I have a couple of housekeeping items that I just want to let you folks know. Tonight's session is being recorded. So if you would rather not have your face show up on the video, then you are more than welcome to turn your video off. But I happen to know that our panelists also love to see faces because, of course, in our world we love to see reactions and know that that what we're saying is being heard, and if you have questions. So feel free to leave your video on as well. We will ask that everyone mute themselves, partly because we are recording tonight and partly because we're expecting a fairly large number of folks. So because of that, we're also asking you to use the chat for any questions and comments. And we do have folks who are monitoring the chat box, so feel free to use that at will. See if I can get it to advance. There we go. At the end of this session, we will be emailing you an evaluation and putting that in the chat box. We're really asking for your feedback on what you think of this program this evening, as well as what you think we could be talking about beyond this. So please, please fill out that at the end of this session. And of course, if you have any technology trouble, please let me know, and I'm more than happy to figure it out or help you figure it out.
All right, thank you so much, Mary Helen. Do you have anything else you would like to add at this point before I get started?
Nope, at this point, I'm going to turn it over to you, Sabrina.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful opportunity for all of us to get together and think about this experience, this collective experience, collective trauma that we have all experienced. And it's a great opportunity for us to come together to talk about what we've learned, the ways that we can support each other and help each other in this experience. And what a great group of panelists we have asked to come together and support you in your experiences at home and through your agencies. I know that we had a different opportunity to work with some providers last week in a session, and then of course our wonderful families and caregivers and providers are here with us this evening, and we really appreciate you joining us this evening. Each of the panelists will go ahead and introduce themselves, and as we was indicated, please put the information in the chat if you need any help or have any specific questions for any of the panelists. So I believe Teresa and Shazia will introduce themselves, and we'll just go through our panelists for a short introduction.
Should I go ahead?
Please do.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Shazia Dahar. I'm a parent of two beautiful children, one with autism, the other one with ADHD. And I'm so pleased to be here tonight to share our family's experience kind of navigating this online journey of education. So thank you so much for letting me be here tonight.
Teresa, would you like to introduce, or yes, Teresa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Teresa Harris, and I have a son, Ryan, who just graduated from Ohio Virtual Academy. I've been doing virtual learning for 14 years, and then 5 years before that, working with my son. So just remote learning can be a positive experience. I'm glad to be here tonight and look forward to hearing your question.
Sarah, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Sarah Schroeder. I'm a faculty member at the University of Cincinnati in the School of Education. I teach educational technology, and I also have a daughter who is 14 who has Asperger's and is highly gifted. And we did online school for 3 years before she went to high school this year, and traditional schooling before that. So I come at this as both a professional in educational technology and then also as a parent of a daughter on the spectrum.
Katie, Molly, which one of you would like to go next?
Molly can go first. Hi, everyone. My name is Molly Light. I'm from Warren County Educational Service Center. I supervise the social communication classroom program. We have about 17 classrooms for students on the ASD spectrum or have associated disabilities that still need highly structured environment with a low ratio. We have about 100 students in our program. We went through the online learning situation in the spring, and we're continuing to do that with some of our students now. So we're here for the school perspective. And I'm Katie Dart. I'm here with Molly Light this evening, and I am the transition coordinator for the Warren County ESC or Social Communication Program. And I kind of have a dual role. I also do classroom support, so just a lot of work, daily with our teachers. So happy to be here, and hopefully we can provide some, valuable information for you guys.
I was thinking that perhaps I should go back and introduce myself. Thank you, panelists, for your introductions. I'm Sabrina Winchell. I am an employee of Warren County Educational Service Center, and I am in the Kings District 5 days a week. I am a special ed supervisor in the district, and then I am also their autism and behavior coach. Last year, I worked in a couple of situations. I was at Mason Heights and also in Kings. And so coaching and working with families is an important part of my job, and supporting students with some challenges related to remote learning is also part of our work. I am supporting students who are in-house in school, and then I'm also supporting students who have opted to go option 2, which is an online King's Academy, and then also Apex Learning as well. So in addition to what Molly said, is kind of bringing that school perspective as well. But I am going to stop talking so we can let our Teresa and Shazia share. Thank you again for joining us.
Okay, thank you, Sabrina, so much. So briefly, just introduce myself again. My name is Shazia Dahar, and I'm a parent and an advocate. I work at the Islamic Center Greater Cincinnati, and also my husband's practice. So we have 2 children, one with mild Asperger's ADHD, and the other has non-speaking autism and is gifted. Both kids are in college, and it's taken a lot of different pathways to get where we are today. Online schooling was very integral for us because we had medically complex children, and one of our child has non-speaking autism. So it's been a very interesting journey, and I'd like to kind of share a little bit the challenges and some of the strategies we've used to make it a more positive experience for us. So, Mary, can you go to the next slide? Okay, so just to give a little bit of a background, we've done quite a few different methodologies. We've done ABA to the age of 6. We did the rapid prompting method. We've homeschooled till age 20 in the Ohio Virtual Academy. We've done quite a few therapies. We've done integrated listening systems and auditory integration therapy. My husband is a psychiatrist, so we've really focused on some biomedical interventions. We've done prompt speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech, ABA, AAC typing, and we've participated in various kinds of educational environments. We've done homeschooling co-ops, online clubs, therapy camps, swimming, exercise, and various other activities. And we really found that each child took their own kind of pathway and their own pace. But we found that there were some very unique challenges to online learning, which were very different from the experience that our children had in a brick and mortar setting. Next slide. Okay, so as we had a medically complex child, we found that one of the challenges was that he had visual motor integration challenges, and he had a full body apraxia. So our son uses one finger to type, and he needed multi-sensory input and feedback and a lot of visuals, because primarily he's a visual learner, and he had a lot of challenges with auditory discrimination. So one of the strategies that we used when we were teaching him was to provide different methods of response. We often used a digital choice board. We used fill in the blank. We let him create models, use the whiteboard to draw on, had him point to things. And basically, we tried to keep it fresh and continually changing so that we would avoid this mental and physical fatigue, which is very common when you're sitting in front of a screen all day. And what we noticed that for our kids, it was that because they spent most of their time, most of their day, just working through sensory filtration of their environment, trying to keep their environment and trying to keep their bodies calm and being able to process all that information coming at them, we found that they had at times very low energy and also very high anxiety due to that. And so we incorporated quite a few different strategies to help bring down that energy level, to keep things more on a calm, even keel, so they were better able to focus and engage with the content. We incorporated brain breaks. We'd stop and say, let's talk about something else. Let's do something else. Let's do a little puzzle or just something else. We heavily emphasize exercise and yoga 2 to 3 times a day, or adult children now, they exercise, they do yoga multiple times in the day to help their bodies kind of keep on an even keel. And we were very flexible. We tried to always, do a little bit of learning, but then do a little bit of that sensory feedback, because that is so crucial for them to be able to understand and to learn. So another aspect of when your senses are constantly changing and you're dealing with that, one of the challenges is that it's difficult to understand the passage of time. This is particularly very challenging for kids with ADHD or the mild Asperger's. You wonder, have been sitting here for hours? It feels like it. So we have used a lot of different visual schedules or checklists. We've always kept it, again, a whiteboard nearby to help them understand that this is the time that's passing. This is what you've done, and this is what we're going to do next. And there are a lot of digital tools that are available that I'm sure a lot of the teachers here and educators here know about. There's digital ChoiceWorks apps. There are various other apps that you can use, even as parents, that you can help to engage your child. And what the most important thing was that if there is this high anxiety, low energy, this quota of energy that they can give towards learning in the day, it's very important to give them times where they could have a downtime, either getting that sensory input or just going outdoors and recharging themselves. Being able to go outdoors really helped them to relax their body. And a lot of, for a lot of children, I think just being outdoors, being in nature is really healing, and it's really helpful for them too. So let's move on. Another challenge in an online classroom is that the pace of the class is very fast. You know, the information coming at you is very fast, and our children needed direct prompting at times, at least one of our children did, and they needed more time, more wait time as they were typing to communicate. The pace at which you type is going to be very slow. I think the pace at which you communicate is like, I don't know, 300 to 600 words per, you know, minute, and the pace that you type obviously is much, much slower. So how do we deal with that? You know, that kind of challenge. So one of the strategies was that we always got to know our teachers in advance, and we would explain to them, this is how my son communicates, this is how my son learns. And we would ask them to give us the material, the schedule, and questions in advance. When we were in an online classroom setting, we would always give them a way to interact with either an aide or a teacher through a private channel. For example, a lot of the online platforms use chat. Ohio Virtual Academy used a chat, and they used primarily Blackboard as their platform for education. And we would have the aide, you know, kind of, you know, prompt my son, you know what, there's a question coming up. Did you understand this thing? Is there anything that we can do to help you understand it better? Things like that. Another strategy has proven very, very successful, and particularly it's being used in a lot of online academies and schools, is the flipped classroom. That was very, very helpful for us as well, in that, you know, we would look at a PowerPoint or we'd look at that audio file before the class, and that way he would have familiarity with the content and what was coming up. And you know, that would also help us to kind of figure out, well, what can we put into your, you know, your talker or your, you know, communication device to help you be able to really, you know, participate and provide that kind of feedback if the teacher asks you a question. Another challenge was social interaction. Obviously, being in front of a screen all day, you're not able to really, you know, be with other students, be able to kind of get that interaction and an understanding and that feedback of, you know, what you're wanting to communicate and what they're wanting to communicate back to you. So one of the strategies we used here was that we incorporated breakout rooms. We would kind of divide them up into, you know, smaller groups, which is very common in brick and mortar, but something that we also did quite often in or the online environment. The other thing that was really interesting is that we did a lot of project-based learning, in that just as when kids, they do a lot of parallel play, we have kids with autism, they do a lot of parallel play. They'll be playing alongside the periods and maybe not completely interacting, but they are doing a little bit of that parallel play. So in a sense, we created kind of like a parallel work environment in which there would be a project given to the class, and each child had to take a certain aspect. So for our son, obviously he had the apraxia, the motor coordination challenges, but he had good vocabulary. He loved to, you know, to do more creative writing. So he was given the creative writing aspect of a project, and that would help allow him to shine and also to kind of interact with his peers without having to feel like on the spot, like you have to answer questions. So if you can go on. And again, one of the biggest challenges is if you have a nonverbal student, a student that uses an iPad or protocol for text or touch chat or anything of that, the classes use a language-based platform. They do incorporate visuals, but it's primarily language-based. And one of the strategies that we used was we made sure that his device, or that he would have a menu page of words in that subject, and we would direct him to the menu to build independence. That way, it was in the pace and the frenetic pace of a classroom. He had that visual board, that choice board in front of him that he could point to, that he could use as, you know, as a blackboard to be able to initiate and participate in the classroom. And that also enabled the teacher to say at times, "Hey Sam, can you what do you think about this next concept we're going to cover? What are we going to cover? Type it out. You know, we're going to cover so-and-so concept. What do you feel about it?" Say something like that. Anybody else have a comment? So that type of giving them that moment but preparing them for that moment, for that communication, you know, that pre-communication setup that has to be done, really enabled him to learn how to be more of a leader and how to be more as an active participant versus a passive participant. So just listening, to be able to actually participate and give your own, you know, 2 cents. The other challenge that we have had is twice exceptionality. So our child is very unique in that he has a tremendous amount of intelligence and capability. Most of our kids, actually, majority of our kids have. And but at the same time, he had high sensory needs, quite a few, motor coordination, medical issues, as well as challenges in communication. He's a complex communication needs student. So what we found was that we didn't put him in front of the computer all day long. We would give him opportunities to explore the areas that were his strengths. So he loved patterning and things that had to do with like physics and the natural world. That was very interesting for him. So we found things for him to do, activities for him to do that would take him out into nature. We found that he could learn at his own pace with Khan Academy, apps like GeoGebra, just YouTube lectures online. So many universities had YouTube lectures online. It was a great way for him to see another perspective to something. Audiobooks and iBooks, because a lot of our kids, the way that they process is different. They're not sequential processors. They're atypical processors. They're going to process information in parallel processing in different ways. A lot of kids, I mean, they need to see things differently and experience things differently to really learn and incorporate that. So what we found was that any type of embedded instruction we could find, any kind of software, any kind of app or online program that would help him to learn a concept without necessarily repeating it, because if we did too much repetition, it became boring. And we've lost that focus and that interest and that engagement, that desire to learn, which is what we really want for our kids, so we did a lot of that type of like teaching, and we focused on quality versus quantity. It doesn't matter, when we were teaching him that you would have to do, 30 minutes of this or, 40 minutes of that. 10 minutes, you got the concept, you understand it, let's move on. And we tried to do less busy work and try to give them the global picture. A lot of students with autism, they need to see the global picture before they understand the concept fully. Whereas I think for a lot of us, we're sequential thinkers. We need to take it A, B, C, D, and E. They don't necessarily need to do that. They can go from A to D to M to L. They can just skip. So those are some of the strategies that we've learned in an online platform. Next slide, please. So I guess the takeaways for us is that online instruction was actually a pretty positive experience for us. We found that a lot of the physical and sensory barriers that kind of make it difficult to socialize or make it difficult for students to participate were less noticeable online. When my son would type online, his students, his peers would only see his words. They wouldn't see his stem. They wouldn't see, his fidgeting. That didn't matter. It was, in essence, an equalizer. It was a very powerful platform. That platform, that digital platform, can help students with significant support needs become active participants. If the groundwork is done, like it was with us, if they're given the ways to communicate and to share their information and their perspective, it can be a wonderful platform for them to be participants, leaders, and initiators. Digital tools can allow for multimodal ways of response. So there's a particular way that your student learns best. If they're a drawer, if they love to create things, if they love to make stories, whatever it is, that is a great way for them to show what they know. And that's also where you can get them again and keep them engaged. Also, we found that for our son, he was in a segregated classroom, initially in brick and mortar. But we found that through the online platform, he had better quality social interactions because the other students would not just become nervous or feel, this person is different. They truly saw him for his mind. They truly saw him for what he was able to contribute and how he was able to really have opinions and thoughts just like them. And it really changed the perspective for many of his peers that, they may have a lot of, physical differences or movement differences, but they're just like us. They're intelligent. They have a lot of things to say. And just because they're not speaking doesn't mean they're non-thinking. They're definitely understanding things. And finally, one of the great things about the online platform is it can give access to core curriculum for kids who are on functional curriculums. So you can leverage the online platform to take kids from that one place that they're at and work in that area, that zone of progress, to get them to a higher level, to get them to a place where they really find what they're passionate about. And I think that's been one of the most amazing things about our experience was that it gave him the opportunity to find what he was passionate about and to pursue that now in college. So I hope this was helpful to you. And I know my experience is one of many experiences in the online instruction, but it can definitely be a very positive experience. So thank you again so much.
Well, that was just awesome. Shazia and I are friends, and just a remarkable family. And so I loved all your ideas and your thoughts. So I'm going to kind of take it from a little more day-to-day perspective when it comes to online learning, and some advice to learning coaches. So moms and dads out there, grandmas, I saw there was a grandma out there. So when you're in a remote learning situation, we are going to put on our learning coach cap. And that was something that having 14 years of being at Ohio Virtual Academy, I realized, and then early on we left, I left my career because of Ryan's intense severity of autism. And I began a new journey to be his educator. And so that took me through lots of ABA, verbal ABA, certification in PECS. It was funny, 10 years ago, I was the only parent in the class there. PAWS is Parent Professional Autism Work Group Facilitator here in Cincinnati, and then always an autism advocate, and always striving for safety, which is a big #1 concern for me in our community here. So, so I wanted to kind of talk to you a little bit about the pictures really quick. My son is now 21. He graduated from Ohio Virtual Academy. Remote learning really helped him find his career path. Movement is another piece of our, like Shazia touched on, the key to movement, life-changing for our family. And there is research coming out about autism and the need for movement and reducing stims and anxiety. So look for that. You'll see the next picture is us at University of Cincinnati in their CEASE program, which Ohio Virtual Academy paid for that program through remote learning. That's my family, my husband Paul, my daughter Ashley, and Ryan. She's now studying to be a developmental pediatric neurologist, and that has been life-changing because of remote learning. It brought our family together. It gave my other child compassion for Ryan, and he saw the improvements. So, and they learned and taught him in that environment, in remote learning. So they were his teachers too, and I think more he was our teacher. But anyways, there he is, you know, at my desk. And then I wanted to touch really quick. People are really concerned about remote learning when it comes to socialization. It has been a benefit to us, our family, because the moms, it's a new community. It's a new kind of lifestyle where families are, I engaged other moms online. We became friends, our families became friends, and we call it the Guy Group. For 11 years, we've celebrated birthdays and holidays and Christmas, and life has become meaningful because of the true socialization and friendships that were formed through remote learning. So next screen. All right, so here we go. So I have to laugh at this picture. So I didn't really touch on much about my husband because I only have 10 minutes, so we'll talk quickly. But I wanted to talk to you about mindset and how that truly matters, especially when you are on remote learning. You know, I laugh because if this was a vacation outing, like this is a thing where you can go, you can photograph wild animals out in Alaska and Antarctica. My husband's mindset for vacation is like adventure and fun. And okay, this is not my mindset. This is not me going on vacation, seeing an animal. I'm a beach girl, sit and do minimal movement. But it's okay because my mindset is different than my husband's mindset. And so So day in, so let's turn our eyes to remote learning. Day in and day out, you will be having to deal with different mindsets. Your child's mindset, your mindset, the educator's mindset, right? And no matter what's happening, you know, be it COVID, be it I'm tired, we have medical issues, we have life challenges, it doesn't matter. Learning has to take place. And so it is critical when you move into that remote learning environment that you have a positive mindset for that day and for that learning. And so I know a lot of people are like, well, great, but I don't have that mindset. You know, I'm not feeling it. I'm not, you know, and I get that. 14 years of it. I get that. So I am going to give you 3 ways and action steps that you can take to kind of get to that place where you are having a positive mindset. So let me turn my page because I've got them all written down. So action step number 1. So I encourage you, get a piece of paper, get a pencil out. That's really tactile. Speaking of sensory, very engaging. Start writing down some notes because I'm really talking to you auditorily. My son has a strength, unlike Shazia's son is more visual. My son did well in this platform because he's very auditory. So his ears work really well. Vision was a challenge. So here we go. So action step for mindset. I need you to ask for the outline, like Shazi was talking about, in advance. So you know what the lessons are. And then I need you to ask this question. Why am I needing to learn this information? And why is my child needing to learn this information? What does it matter? Right? So I say that because you've got to find a way to see value in what you're teaching, or you're not going to be excited about what you're learning. So, you know, like literature, you can teach perspective, you can teach social skills, you can take a mind break and just read an interesting literature story. So mathematics, reasoning, logic, right? Social studies, understanding, Ryan, like I would say, Ryan, you need to understand the world around you. We need to understand, you know, history so we know how to view the future. So there's a question that you can ask yourself to really start thinking about how you're thinking about education. So the next part of that question is tell your child why he's doing what he's doing. All the time, every way you can. Inspire him, give him optimism. Say, well, we're learning this because you know what? You're going to graduate from school. Then you're going to go to college. Then you're going to have a great career. So encouraging and telling the why is really important. The next point is set an intention every day. When you walk into that environment, into that classroom, you need to have set an intention with your child. And so we call it claim our day. So it's very simple. You can have kids who can type, you can have kids who can't even type, can't even handwrite, can't even communicate, do this process. Get a piece of paper, rip that piece of paper in half and write down and talk to your son and say, what kind of day, or daughter, say, what kind of day do you want to have? Do we want to have a, you know, FUN fun day on one piece, or do we want to have a CAL calm day? You know, and have him tap the answer, reach out, tap the answer, fun or calm, super simple. You set your agenda, you claimed your day. So a fun day, well, you know what? It doesn't have to be that difficult. You can talk about, if you're talking about history, you can talk about why are those wigs so weird on George Washington, right? I mean, make it fun. Or you can claim a calm day where you can start lowering your voice. You can dim the lights. You can really move to a calmer pace in your voice. So you can claim a day of a game day or a fun story day, a day of math, a day of science. Whatever the day is, you're claiming it with an intention. And I think that really helps to have that success mindset for you and for your child. And so that's kind of the three points that I wanted to kind of outline. Set an intention every day. Do your outline, ask why you're learning this. And finally, check what you're thinking. So get alone periodically every couple months, and I need you to sit down with a piece of paper and I need you to write down, remote learning is blank. And I want you to download everything you think about remote learning. If you think this sucks, I can't do it, my son isn't smart, then you're going to have a problem. That is your mindset. And so you'll be able to find your mindset. Maybe it's like, I love teaching math. He did great at science. Whatever it is, those are your mindsets, and those are things you can work on to improve your life day in and day out and be successful when it comes to remote learning. So the next one, I think, is sensory environment. So I'll touch on this really quick, and then I'm gonna move on to the next two because I know my time's short. But I think sensory environments, Shazia touched on it briefly, is highly overlooked when it comes to our kids. Many times our kids are looked at and all we see is autism. And then we tie that very, very clearly, and I understand, to behaviors. And negative behaviors, right? Many times, or weird stims, or, and so it's a very interesting point. I kind of had a shift where I realized, because of my son's ability to now communicate with me, how much sensory environments challenge our children. And there are two kinds of environments that we can talk about. Sensory environments like these folks in the balloon, right? That is an environment in itself. Just like a remote classroom environment is an environment in itself. So visually, they're challenged, by the 3,000 feet they've just risen. Auditorily, they may be hearing the igniter, glowing. So they're having an external environment, right? Sensory challenges in the environment. And so we have to look at the environment we're placing our children in remote learning. I've had many teachers come into my classroom here, and they've shared with me how it was much of a kind of a Zen feeling. And so, hang on, I may have to step away here in a minute, but hang on, Bri, I'll be right there, honey. So visual and sensory environments are important to consider, and then also internal environments. So some of the things that my son had shared with me was that many times my eyes and my hands and my body don't work at the same time, Mom. So his sensory internal environment, his sensory system wasn't working right. And he said to me, Mom, I'm not stupid. Hard to get my eyes looking and hearing and moving my body. So I want you to consider sensory environments, and I want you to consider the internal sensory environments of our children. And so we can move on. We can kind of move on to the next one, and we can ask more questions about that in the Q&A. The other point I wanted to bring up tonight that I think is really important is developing a safety net for our children and knowing that success is not optional. I think many times we have to constantly put before us in remote learning the need to create safe environments that we can thrive and be successful in. Like Shazia was talking about some of the examples that she used. So one of the things that I wanted to share was the idea of to teach versus testing. And no one likes to feel unsuccessful. You know, and our kids are not going to want to come to the table and learn when every time they come to the table, they are tested. So my safety net is that we here at my environment, our school, we impart knowledge. I am a teacher and I impart knowledge. I am not, you know, testing everything you know. No one gets 100% all the time. So just know that we are there to impart knowledge. And the next really safety measure for our kids is give them an ability to help them with their anxiety level. Timers and endpoints to lessons, and I count everything for Ryan, like we'll do 10 of this or 10 of that. Also using like a first then strategy, which is really important. So I think that sometimes our kids might be sitting there compliant, or they're acting up and having behavior, well, because you're not helping support them with their anxiety. And so time is really a safety net that helps them to stay calm. And my next point is safety strategies. So it's all good and fine to have remote learning, but if we are having behaviors and we have anxiety and the kid's screaming and running around and you're pulling him to the computer, he can't stand and sit, you know, it is so difficult to have success in that environment. So Anne has in her folder document, a document that was given to me with a safety strategy list and idea and how to create a safety strategy. So that basically looks like your top 5 things to do when you feel anxiety. So for example, Ryan's, I'll just read his. Ryan was hitting and he was beginning to hit and then kind of slap his hand at when he would sit down at the table. And so we created a calming protocol, a strategy where we used our hands. We counted 3, 2, 1, and we trained him and myself to have a strategy of coming to calm. So that is one of our strategies. Me singing a song to him, a song he remembers, that is another strategy to help him calm. Going on a walk, that is another strategy. And also having a snack, having a drink, those are all safety nets. Those are safety measures to make learning remotely successful. So, you know, if I said to you, what are your safety strategies for your child? Can you list them off? Can you tell me hands down as quick as that? What can you do to help keep your child calm? Those are the things that need to be used before teaching, in transition to the classroom, during class, after class, all day long, to help keep and manage that anxiety. So a safety plan and a safety net is huge, huge. You know, or you're going to just be having a war. No, hands down, no, stop, you know, sit down. All of those things aren't effective learning strategies. They may work short term, but long term, day in and day out, they're not effective. And they bring that optimism and that self-worth to a low level with our kids because they're trying to control their sensory bodies. And they're trying to control those senses that are kind of getting offline or off the mark. Safety strategies are important. And then finally, my next one is there is power in choice, and choice gives voice. So let's think about that. Lots of choices where to go in those buildings. We have choice, we have freedom. COVID did not give us much freedom, did it? It didn't feel good to have that aspect of our life taken in, having fewer choices. Our kids live that every day. So I say to you, it's very easy to do choices. Doing a kind of a teach and ask type of statement, a piece of paper and a pencil will work just fine for giving choices. It's very simple. For example, you can ask your child tomorrow, hi, Ryan, today we're going to have a fun day. What kind of color pen do we want to use? We take the paper, we rip it, we say, do we want to have a red pen, R-E-D, red pen, or do we want to have a blue pen? Red or blue, you choose, right? A simple choice gives power and gives ownership. You know, do we want to talk about math or science? Do you want a 7-minute break, or do we want to have a break for 10 minutes? Now, any of these choices as your teaching choice is fine. Red pen, blue pen, it doesn't matter. So choice is something that's so powerful. Choice can be on an iPad. Choice can be, you know, whatever method works for you, but choice is really important for them to have a voice. Do you want to, you know, talk in your classroom, you know, or do you want to sit quietly? So choice is really important. And then I think that's it for my slide. The last one slide is just a big thank you. And to remember, you know, we are kind of awakeners to our children. We are teachers, yet we are awakeners. We are seekers. You guys are seekers here. You wouldn't be here if you weren't. You're seeking learning. And so I just want to thank you for your time and for listening. And I hope that this was of value to you. So there you go.
That was amazing. I was reading the chat box, and I'm sorry there was a bit of a hesitation. Shazia and Teresa, thank you so much for sharing that information. I'm just gonna kind of share a couple of points that really stick out for me. I think what we recognized at Mason Heights and now Western Row, and in our work with children who struggle with behaviors or have autism and have difficulties in their home environment at times, I think that thinking of our home as a classroom, a place where they can learn, a place where we can set up opportunities for them to practice their yoga, practice their breathing. I loved hearing and being reminded of the importance of, it's not only that we do exercises throughout the day, but we're building that capacity lifelong. That this is not just an opportunity in this short time frame, but we are trying to build and utilize these strategies for a healthy life long term. So, and I love the things that we were talking about in terms of the interests. We worked very hard on looking at developing interests and cultivating those, whether it's through iPads and games and activities or drawings or auditory or all of those wonderful ways that Shazia was talking about that she supported her sons. And then the other, I loved the claim our day, right? Just thinking about that opportunity where, so I claimed my day this morning with something I didn't do normally. I took a B something vitamin, I drank coffee, and I had some other source of high energy something. So I think that my body claimed my day because the day kind of got away from me. So I just love that mindfulness and just having that awareness that we need to take care of ourselves, not only as the student and caring for our students, but also as the caregivers. Crucial is not only taking care of our students, and that is first and foremost, but we also need to look at how are you supporting yourself, and of these strategies, which ones are you pursuing for yourself and your own self-care. So so thank you for that. Those ideas were wonderful, and we appreciate your time and putting those pieces together for us to be ways to support our students at home. And our next person is Sarah, and she may want to reintroduce herself as well. But thank you again, Teresa and Shazia, for those important points that you made for us.
Yeah, and I could relate to a lot of the things you said. I messaged Anne in the chat. I was like, I'm not sure I have anything else to add. They covered everything. It was so good. So, but I'm Sarah Schroeder. I'm a faculty member at the University of Cincinnati in the Instructional Design and Technology program in the School of Education. But then I'm also the mom of a daughter on the spectrum who is in 9th grade now, and also a son who is highly gifted and also highly anxious, but is technically neurotypical, but we know that that's not really a thing for most kids. So I'm a mom of 2, and my daughter switched to fully online school in 6th grade. In the middle of the year, we had some issues where just traditional schooling just wasn't working for her anymore at all. I'm sure all of you can relate. And so we switched to Ohio Connections Academy full-time. And the one thing, when we switched to the remote environment in the spring, when we did the emergency remote instruction, we were already remote with my daughter, which made my life a lot easier compared to everyone else's, I think. But I was also working from home a lot already because of that. And but I saw my son have to shift to remote learning, and it was very, very challenging for him to shift to remote learning. And then I started to remember all the pain that we had when we first had to shift to remote learning with my daughter. And the one thing I told every parent I talked to was that this is not homeschool. That people keep calling it homeschool, like, oh, we're homeschooling now. This isn't homeschool. We still have schools, we still have teachers, we still have support staff. We still have IEPs that are supposed to be followed. And I think believing that because we're at home, the parents are doing everything and we are now homeschooling is really a misconception. I think parents need to think of themselves as a coach in this environment, which Teresa and Shazia did such a great job of talking about, this idea of coaching and supporting. And Teresa, I could really relate because my daughter, we found this one kind of herbal tea that she really, really liked. And she's crazy picky. She eats like almost nothing. But this one type of herbal tea that she just loves, and Hershey Kisses. And so whenever she needed a sensory break, we would do herbal tea or Hershey Kisses. And even just that moment of stand up and stretch, put a Hershey Kiss in your mouth, taste it, feel it, right? I mean, even that little thing to reset your sensory system would sometimes snap her out of some kind of negative spiral over something academic. And so when she was little, it was a glass of water. It would snap her out of anything if she drank a glass of water. It was like magic. And so I think finding those things for your children that are happy moments, are relaxing moments is so critical. But you're coaching your students. You're not their only teacher in this current environment. And I think too, we expect our lives to suddenly be like Pinterest boards as parents. I unfollowed a few people on Twitter when the pandemic started because I was like, I'm never going to do what they're doing. Like, that's just not, and I always appreciated the ed tech professionals out there who are like, anybody else relying on Disney Plus right now to get through the day? Because, that's how my day is rolling. And so I think we think success looks like this straight line. We're going to create a schedule and it's going to be great. And we're going to snap, 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 and it's all going to go, right? And even with kids on the spectrum, we think we're going to be able to put supports in place and we're going to be able to do what 3 intervention specialists and an entire classroom full of peers could do, right? All on our own at home. And I think this illustration is really important to remember, that we think success looks like this straight line, but in reality, success is like, it's all over the place. Like today, my son just hit the wall with school, with online school. And I still had work to do, but I said, I don't have any meetings. We're shutting it down. We're going hiking. And we went to a park near our house. We hiked, 2 miles straight up a hill, 470 feet, straight back down. And he was reset, right? And it took an hour, but it was totally worth it. So sometimes we have to veer off that path we planned. And I think oftentimes as parents of kids on the spectrum too, we have systems in place to help them. And we think we need to follow all those all the time. So remembering that success kind of you know, it's going to be inconsistent. And some days you're going to get through all of their schoolwork, and other days you're going to get through a fraction of it. And some days you're going to be really productive in the morning, and then other days you're going to be really productive from 4 to 6 at night, you know, and it just varies for every family. And that's really important to remember as well. I think learning to stick to something is a life skill that we all have to develop. And I know for my daughter, when she went to fully remote instruction, she has really learned to do the less privileged tasks, where before she would fight them and just push them off and refuse to do them. We started to get in a habit where she owned it more, and she would work better on a schedule. You know, this independence and trusting that she could do some of this on her own really paid off. And she's starting to learn to stick to things, even if she doesn't want. We have the algebra discussion every day. Why do I have to do algebra? Algebra makes no sense. I'm never going to use this, right? Why? But today I went downstairs. I said, what are you working on? She said, I'm working on algebra. And I was like, I am so proud of you for me not having to force you to do your algebra and put Post-its all over your computer, like algebra, 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 to remind you to do it. So this is my daughter, Elizabeth. She loves to play the ukulele. She is, I always say, her heart is full of sunshine and glitter. She's just happy all the time. But the one thing we learned very quickly was flexibility is critical. That the schedule you create might not work, and it probably won't. And you've probably already found that. Work with your kids on setting up a schedule. Like Teresa said, what kind of day are we going to have? What are we going to get done today? What are your preferred tasks? What are your less preferred tasks? We do a lot of if-thens in our house. So we do a lot of, well, if you get your algebra done, then we can go for the hike, or then we can go, you know, out in the backyard and run around and play ball, or, you know, take the dog for a walk. Don't start from zero, like with nothing on a schedule, but make sure your schedule is realizing that pacing's really different now. I think one thing a lot of parents I've seen fall into is this idea, well, my kids are at school from, you know, 8 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So they need to be at school from 8 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock in the afternoon at home. And that's just not the case. You know, when you think about the classroom, they're not learning from 8 o'clock in the morning till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, right? They're getting up, they're moving around, they're taking breaks, they're doing recess, they're socializing, they're changing classes. So the actual amount of learning that's happening is probably like this compared to what you think it is when they're at school. So pacing's totally different now, and the expectations need to be very fluid, because like Teresa said, some days are good days, some days are not so good days, right? And some days we need to have a fun day. And, you know, we've tried to get some things in the house. We're not leaving our house at all right now, hardly, because of my husband's health issues. And so we had to find some things that would give us breaks, you know, that we could do. And it has to be things that are fun. I can't make my kids do the things I want to do. That's not going to give them a break from school. So we had to keep the expectations really fluid, and a lot of adjustments needed to happen. So make sure you're talking to your children about when they want to do their work, how fast they want to do their work, or they're able to do certain work, what supports they need to do certain things, and then where they want to work. And my kids don't always want to work at a desk in a chair. I don't always want to work at a desk in a chair. You know, sometimes I like to stretch out on the floor with my laptop. Sometimes under a desk with a blanket over top of it is fine, right? So, so make sure you're letting them have some flexibility with those things too. And then these are my super high tech. I know I'm an educational technologist. These are my super high tech supplies you need to have around. I'm a big fan of egg timers, but if you can't do the noise of an egg timer, time timers are great. And there is an app for time timer that you can use on your phone. It's a nice visual timer. They work great for breaks. It also works great because I would ask my daughter, because she would rush. I don't know if anyone else's children rush through work to get it done, and she doesn't check her answers and she just flies, like trying to get it done. So I would say, well, how long do you think you need to work on algebra? And she would say, well, I think I can get through this in about 30 minutes, right? My daughter's highly verbal. So She would say, oh, about 30 minutes. And I was like, all right, let's set the timer for 35 and let's see where you are after that. But you have to work on it for at least 30 of that 35 minutes. So she had to wait and take her time because she had the timer in front of her for 30 minutes versus I'm going to get done with it in 15 and then I'm going to turn on my favorite YouTube video, which was what would have happened before. And I don't want to stand next to her all day. I'm working full time too. So time timers worked great. We found she hates calendars, but she loves checklists. So like some kids really like calendars, she hates them, but she'll do a daily checklist. So we sit down in the morning and have homeroom and we create the list. And it has to include fun things too. So it'll say 30 minutes for algebra, and then it'll say, 10 minutes taking the dog for a walk, and then another 30 minutes, so our schedule has the fun things on it too. So she has things to look forward to. She does OutSchool classes. If anyone's ever done OutSchool before, I know Shazia talked about the benefit of online for these students and being able to have new experiences. My daughter went to classes at the zoo once a week. She went to classes at the museum center. So she got a lot of socialization with kids that had similar interests and she could talk to. Where in a traditional school, she had a very hard time finding kids that had the same interests and wanted to talk to her. So it was really great. But OutSchool is fantastic. And so like right now, she goes to an improv class once a week, fully online with OutSchool. Same kids, they're all over the country. They all know each other now. They just laugh for an hour. It's great. Post-it notes are my absolute favorite thing in the world. I use them for visual supports for my daughter. So she rushes when she takes a quiz and she doesn't remember to check her answers. So I would take a Post-it and I would take a big fat Sharpie or marker and I would just write on there, check answers. And then I would stick it on her screen up in the corner. Or if they're taking a test that has a timer and it's stressing them out because most of our kids have extended time, the timer is not even necessary. Take a Post-it and cover the timer so they can't see it, and it will reduce their stress level exponentially. So Post-its are my favorite. If she has a live lesson at 1, I can write English 1 o'clock and stick it on her screen in the corner. So it's right there in her line of sight. So everyone should buy Post-its and take stock in Post-its during online learning because they're absolutely critical. And then just keep trying different things and take, some really low key schedules and goals for the day that they can. So today on my daughter's schedule was fold your laundry. As part of her school day, fold your laundry. It's okay for those things to be part of her school day. Last week she had a recipe and she had to make the recipe by herself, and she made a mug cake, like a microwave mug cake. So it wasn't anything she could cut herself or burn herself, but she had to follow a recipe, and she has started making her own lunches. She has started, changing the laundry, walking the dog on her own. So there's some great independent things that have started happening, which wouldn't happen if she was in a traditional school and had a full-time aide, which is what she had before. And I'm not watching my time at all. I'm usually really good about watching my time. Anna asked me if I needed a heads up. I'm like, no, I'm good. And then I'm like, I'm not watching my time. And then just remember that play is part of learning. So play should be part of the school day, right? And it doesn't matter if they are a high schooler or they are a kindergartner, play should be part of your school day, right? Because play is learning. Play is therapeutic. It is an outlet for our kids. So my son isn't doing soccer because his season was canceled. We have to find other ways for him to play, right? And he's 12 and we still have to find ways for him to play. And play is parent friendly. Like you can play too, right? It doesn't have to just be the kids playing. You can play too, because play is harder to maintain as we get older. We get less playful, but we shouldn't. So we can be playful too. We don't have to be all serious teachers, coaches all the time. We can laugh and have fun and run up and down the hills with our kids as well. We also have to remember that often they're going to have this face, this I'm not good at life face. If you've ever seen that, like, I'm just not good at life today face, which can result in that defiance and meltdown and quitting, which is so common for our kids who struggle in a variety of ways and don't always see their superpowers. So we always call my daughter's strengths her superpowers, and we try to remind her of those when she struggles. But then at the same time, you know, you have to remember that when something happens, and Teresa was talking about the safety plans, right? This is not the time to develop a safety plan. That's not when the rage point isn't when you want to develop your safety plan. This also isn't when you want to try to teach them a lesson about something or change a behavior. So my daughter, we just let her go to her room when she needs to, or go sit on the hammock swing when she needs to. We don't stop her. That's one of our rules, is if she says she needs a break, we honor that, and she goes and takes her break. And what we've realized is when we do that, it usually only gets to about the middle of the rage level. It kind of stays at rumbling and recovery and goes back down to the teachable moment. When she first started an online school, oftentimes we try to fight her on things like, you have to do your algebra right now, right? She's like, I don't want to do algebra. And she's having, you know, or we had a moment, I always like to tell the story. We had a moment where she had to do Elizabethan literature, was like the topic. And she's really into plays. So she thought she was going to get to do something about plays because they had read a play for the literature. Well, the project was do a PowerPoint presentation on Elizabethan culture. And boy, did she have a hissy fit. I mean, like ugly, 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 right? I mean, crying and laying on the floor and hiding under the table, crying because she wasn't getting to do a play. So we did the same thing. You know, how can we make this fun? What is something you like that we can do with this? What's Elizabethan? And we brainstormed for a little while, and we landed on a tea party. So we made a tea party out of whatever was in the kitchen at that time. Just whatever, it didn't matter. We made it look like a tea party. And she sat down immediately and did those stinking Elizabethan slides because I had a cup of tea and some Oreos sitting on a plate, and we called it a tea party. You know, so I think you have to just think flexibly, keep away from this rage point as much as you can. And just remember that, you know, we all have that grit hiding inside of us somewhere that we have to find. And parents sometimes feel like we've lost our grit, and kids do too. But, you know, this passion and perseverance that our children are learning right now for long-term goals is going to last them a lifetime. If we can teach them that they're going to learn this over time, and they're going to get stronger and stronger. And I think that's what we have to remember. So I know I'm the educational technologist, but in terms of parents, I don't have any brilliant technologies that are going to help parents. You know, there obviously are tools that you can help your kids. Like, for example, there's if anyone's kids like comic strips, which seems to be pretty common with a lot of our kids, the graphic novels and comic strips. There's a great free tool called Storyboard That, which we've started using to replace sometimes writing assignments, sometimes presentations. We just email the teacher, and be an advocate for your student. So, and my email, you can email me anytime if you're like, I need a tool for this project. There's so many out there. It's hard to cover them all in a presentation, but think about what they could present or do or produce that would be different, that might show their strengths. And there's plenty of tools out there to do that. So like Storyboard That is fantastic for comic strips. My daughter loves to do presentations that are interactive. So she likes to add questions in, you know, for her teacher or her classmates. So we find interactive presentation tools. She had to do a timeline project, and she wanted to add in pictures and videos. And so we used a tool called Sutori, which if your children have issues with linear thinking at all, it's Sutori, but it's free, and it helps them lay ideas out in a linear way, and they can put in little quizzes and videos and pictures and little text boxes along the way. And I like to organize things for my kids using bookmarking tools. So if you have a bookmarking tool that you use, one I really like is called Wakelet, which is also free. And I'll put all these in the chat in a second. But Wakelet is fantastic if you're looking for a way to put together supports for your child, or if you're trying to organize their resources for the day around a certain topic. It prevents you from having to be really creative because it just lays it out for you. It's really wonderful. And so that's another fantastic tool that you can use. But I would just say everything Shazia and Teresa said is right on target, and just making sure that you're being as flexible as you can. And like I said, I can't cover all 1 million tools that are out there right now that are free and available. But if you have a specific need, type it in the chat during the Q&A. And I'm happy to throw some links in there for you, because I think that might be more beneficial than me sharing a whole bunch. But my favorites are Sutori for linear thinking, Storyboard That for visual thinking, and then Wakelet for collecting resources for my kids. Those are my top 3. So hopefully that was helpful. And if you have questions or specific technology needs, tools you're looking for to solve problems, type them in the chat, and I'm happy to throw in whatever I got for you in my head right now. So let me figure out how to stop sharing my screen. It's always fun, isn't it? When you're on different tools. Oh, I don't want to quit. That's not what I want to do. Oh, there, I got it. Okay. See, even the educational technologists can't find the shutdown button. So Mary Helen, you're fine. You're fine.
Sarah, I loved one of the things that you said. First of all, that a glass of water for your daughter was just this magical reset. I love that. I wish I was still at that phase in my life, but in the evening, there are other things I'd rather have than a glass of water. But anyway, yeah. I don't know about anyone else. I'm sure I'm alone in that one. But I think one of the things that I loved that you said was that you are not your child's teacher. You are their coach. You are supporting. You are, and I was trying to think of the term that Teresa used as well. But I think what you families and caregivers and parents and everyone needs to remember is that those of us who have spent a gazillion years in classrooms, I can assure you that never, not one day within my teaching career did anything ever go the way I thought it was going to go. And Katie Dart, give me a yes on that, right? Molly? I mean, those of us who were in the classroom for a long time, things never went the way we anticipated. Many of the things that we thought we would accomplish, we didn't, because we were being responsive to our students and to our child's need and needs. So that idea that you must accomplish such, it's not realistic. It's not realistic for the classroom, and it's not realistic for families. So just supporting your students' needs, I think that is so important. Teaching is a varied day, and then owning the independence or helping your students build that capacity for independence. And we build that capacity starting with 30 seconds at a time. So for some of our more intensive situations, it might require us to build independence for 15 seconds, and then we build the 20 seconds and 30. It's not sitting your student down and having them work independently for 10 minutes or 15 or 20 when they aren't able to do that in 20-second increments. So just be thinking about that, and that is okay, because that's how we would be doing it in the classroom as well. I loved everything you had to say, Sarah. You just have such a passion for the information you were sharing, and the whole idea of the herbal tea and the kisses. Just having one kiss could change her daughter's day, and just supporting our students and our children in that way is just lovely. So thank you so much for sharing that. And now, some of my dear, dear friends, Molly and Katie, are going to open this up and support Q&A, and the panel will be able to answer questions for you. And if we have a lull in our conversation, I will share a question and panelists can answer that. But we really want our participants to share their thoughts and their questions so that we can support you the best way that we can. Thank you.
Thanks, Sabrina. And you know, you can chime in too because you were along on this journey with us. Yeah, you were right there with us.
I definitely will. And I continue to be. Yeah.
Right, right. I'll just start. You know, I think and the ladies that shared, you're all amazing. And just what you've been able to share with families is just so incredibly valuable. And that's kind of where I'm kind of leaning. You know, as a transition coordinator, I am blessed to be able to work very intimately with families. And that is something that I really value and has just really helped me grow as a professional. And I think at the beginning of this, what I realized was that our teachers don't necessarily have those experiences. They haven't been able to necessarily collaborate with families at the level that maybe they wanted to. So although COVID is a nightmare, and I know we even talked about with the leadership team, that ability to be able to work so closely with our families was absolutely amazing. And I think there was a lot of really beautiful lessons learned by our educators. And I know that those lessons will stay with them, you know, throughout their professional career. So there's always, you know, a silver lining. And I think that was one of the really big ones for us. So, you know, as me and Molly were listening, we're just kind of going to build off what you guys said because you say it so well. So, you know, what we were thinking about is, you know, what did that collaboration with families look like? One, it was not perfect. That's what we want to talk about too. You know, we were trying our best to replicate a lot of materials and support specifically around, you know, self-regulation, reinforcement systems and schedules, you know, replicating those materials to work for the family and to work for the student in their new learning environment, which was at home. And our students were already greatly confused by this experience as it was. So, you know, a lot of the times, like me and Molly talked about, yeah, you were planning SDI math today. Instead, we practiced our level system and our calming protocols. And we worked with the families to see how we could modify that within their home environment. And again, I think that empowers our families. You know, I hear about our teachers talking about all these systems all the time in the IEP, but what does that really mean to my kiddo? What does that really mean to my family? I think that it really gave us an opportunity to kind of branch into this area, which we've always wanted to do. So I just, you know, the first model was never perfect. I can't tell you how many level systems I revised over closure to make it fit for the student and that family. You know, schedules. The first schedule we set was never right. You know, we would figure out the student needed, you know, way more breaks, you know, in between those instructional periods. They needed movement breaks, sensory breaks. You know, we really built in a lot of that collaboration with related service, but it was a learning experience for all of us. So I think, you know, giving parents grace, empowering parents, and to know that that flexibility was really key in all of this. And we're still learning, like we're really still learning. So Molly, I know you have a lot to add to that as well.
Well, I was just thinking, Sarah had said at the beginning of her part that the parents became a coach for their students' learning. I felt the teachers became coaches for the parents because it was really through the parents that our students were going to get their hands on the learning because we weren't there to support that. So I think, you know, looking at how the collaboration happens, it's just a little different because there is an interdependency with, you know, the parents and the teacher and the student, that they all had to work together in order for it to be successful for that student. So for me, it was the most impactful part was just that collaboration and how that looked different. And I felt that a lot of our teachers came back and felt like they had a newfound relationship with some of their parents because they were able to literally see inside the home, and they were able to see the interaction between parents and student and be part of that. And I just think that relationship was able to expand, and then we've, you know, been able to see how that's related this year as students have come back. Our program is in-person learning, but we still have a few students that are doing remote, and a couple that are doing a hybrid model. So we've been able to kind of see the other side of it after remote learning, what has occurred. Yeah, and I want to stress that it does not have to look perfect. You know, I think one of the big pieces that we're trying to replicate what kids do at school and what works for them, and what makes them successful in the home environment. And a one-to-one model on that was not working. Things had to be adapted, modified, and even sometimes thrown out the window, and we had to figure out something else. So, you know, even when you're trying to implement some of those things that might really help your student at home, it's not going to look perfectly, especially the first time. But that doesn't mean it should be completely abandoned. I think that's where the conversation and the collaboration comes in, to be able to talk through those things and say, okay, well, this didn't work this day. Are we going to change it? Are we going to try again? What's our next step? So it was a very organic type of flow, I felt like, for a lot of our families, that they were able to, you know, kind of peek behind the curtain and see what was working at school, and what that relationship could bring to that remote learning situation.
Molly, I'm going to add something else too, because I'm just thinking about a couple specific scenarios. You know, some of our students do have some pretty significant challenging behaviors, and goodness, their anxiety levels spiked. You know, being at home, their whole world was just blown up, and so we did see a lot of behavioral escalation at home for a while, and we kind of had to get really creative with some of our teams. So meaning, you know, students that would have, you know, HPC providers coming into the home, us, you know, scheduling things during their hours so we could do training with them to kind of ease some of the struggle and stress off the parent, to know that they weren't going to have to be the ones solely taking care of this, and helping to get their child back on track, helping to help control their, you know, child's anxiety, and keeping the household safe was really, really important. So we did, I mean, we even, you know, we went outside of our school circle to work with the much larger team to make sure that the whole family was supported through this. And I think that was really important too. You have to think outside the box. You have to be creative. And we really have to do what we need to do to continue supporting our families, because they're the ones that, you know, they're going to make this work. So I wanted to add that, because that was really an important piece actually for a lot of our families. So, you know, we need to take into consideration the larger teams, the larger resources that we can bring in to support these families during these times.
Yeah, and, you know, a lot of it was interesting to see the response. At the beginning of the closures, I think everybody was kind of in shock, didn't really know what to think, didn't know how long this would last, what was going to happen the next day, week, month. And our kids were going through that too, right? So we really had to look at what are the priorities in learning right now. Is it learning English, math, science? When you're not able to even get to the first step of that learning, what did we need to put in place to make our kids ready for that? And so a lot of time and effort kind of shifted to what supports will work at home. And it really came down to how are we working through self-regulation with these kiddos. So a lot of times we would send the materials home. We would coach parents through setting up what that might look like in their home, if there's a certain spot that the student goes to in order to do some of those routines that help them get back to learning. That was very important. So I think sometimes during remote learning, we tend to forget the foundation. And the foundation does need to be those sensory supports, the self-regulation, making sure that basic needs are met first, and that means physically and emotionally, before we could even attempt the learning, because this was completely new to all of our students. And, you know, to be perfectly honest, not the ideal learning environment for them. It was very, very challenging, especially some of the family contexts. You know, maybe a single parent who was trying to work and have other children who were doing online learning. Those were challenges that were very real, and that we had to work within. You know, we can't create a situation that's not there. So I think the biggest takeaway from the school perspective, at least within our experience, was the communication and the collaboration were most important. That if we didn't have those two pieces, the student was not going to succeed to the point that you know, we wanted them to, or to get them at least kind of close within a unique situation.
And Molly, one of our participants has asked on the chat. His name is Trouble, so please speak up and join on this. Trouble, he says his son is a 12th grader and he's now doing hybrid model of education, which I think a lot of us are looking at that currently. That how do we help to structure opportunities for students to continue to work when the parent may not be there? As a 12th grader, Trouble's at work during the day. On the days that his son is home, how can he help to structure those things? What strategies can he use? Any suggestions from any of the panelists? Although Molly, it made me think of you when you were saying, you know, we have to be flexible about what are our expectations and what are we doing.
Sure. One thing that we had to really focus on was what were the areas where the student was already successful, and then build upon that. So if it was a student that did really well with routines, that's the strategy that we leaned on. And so we set those schedules to make sure that, you know, when there wasn't a parent that was directly supporting that, the student kind of knew, okay, I do this first, and then I do this, and then I do this. Setting up those structured work systems that make sense for that student so that they know what to do first, next, and last, even if, you know, they're non-readers. So I think going back to those strategies that work already with independence, building the independence of our students, those can lend themselves to these remote situations if there isn't someone available to directly support them.
So I will just chime in. Thank you, Joan, for reading my question. He does well with the schedule. Unfortunately or fortunately, he is following his schedule as it is in the school. So it goes very quick. The transitions aren't that long. He's sitting most of the day, and his anxiety has been like through the roof. I'm not able to be here to kind of give him those breaks, or, you know, I know the things that help calm him down. So I'm just trying to figure out a way to figure out how to incorporate that during the day, like maybe when he has his study hall, when he has lunch, you know, so then that way he knows to go to it himself, or he knows to have the break, and this is what calms you down, instead of me being here initiating it.
Right, right. And building those things into his schedule. So not clear, you know, not without the knowledge of kind of what that looks like for you or for him during the remote learning day. But, you know, within his visual schedule, maybe the first thing he does are some of those calming strategies. Then he can be more ready to go into that first period, and sprinkling those throughout the day. I think could be really impactful. One of the biggest things that's helped us with those calming protocols and routines is practice. So we don't use them at first when we are highly escalated. We have to learn how to use them when we are calm, happy, and ready to learn.
Right. Okay.
Practicing those so that it almost becomes automatic. When I'm feeling this way, I need to do this, because we've practiced it over and over,
Right.
3 to 5 times a day. I mean, it really is important, and making sure that those things can be done anywhere. It can be done at home, can be done at school, can be done in the community, just so that carryover can happen.
And we're happy to send you some of the tools we use with our students. We're really big on developing level systems for our students to help them independently self-regulate. So they're identifying how they're feeling, what their body looks like, how their body feels when they're feeling different emotions, and then a protocol to attack each one of those.
Yes.
And that has been super effective for our students, not only in the school environment, but the home environment as well. We are happy to share anything, and our emails are on, our emails are on the slide. So if you even want us to send you some templates or reach out, set up a Zoom, to talk through how we do that with our students, we're happy to help in any way.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it makes it a challenge with him being a teenager now. He's not as receptive as he was when he was younger. So it makes it a challenge. And I'm like, you need to do these things because it helps to calm you down. So I would appreciate some more ideas on that.
I have 2 kids that push back when I give them calming strategies. So I totally get it. And I work full time. And when my daughter went to fully online school, I was at work. Yeah. And, no one else could calm her down. Yeah. So no one else could de-escalate her. That was why we had to pull her out of school. They couldn't de-escalate her at school. But I don't know. Does he have a cell phone?
He has a phone. He will call me anytime during the day if something isn't, like the lights went out today and he was FaceTiming me like back to back to back, and I was able to calm him down and let him know, okay, when the lights come back on, you're just going to jump back on your class. He called me and I noticed and I probably should have just let him take a break because I think it was just a lot for him. And so I said, you got to get back on your class now, class is in. And he kind of just laid there like, really? So, but you think of those things afterwards, and now just listening to you guys, I'm like, I probably should have just let him just take that break and then jump into your last class. So then that way he had time to kind of calm down.
Sometimes that is
every day is learning.
It is.
You have to figure this out.
Right.
One thing that helps with our older students is bringing in special interests into their calming routines. I mean, when you think about what some of us do when we are not feeling our best, we might listen to our favorite song, book that we really like. So incorporating what those special interests are for that individual can help motivate them to engage in those routines, but also, doing something that you like to do just naturally helps you calm down.
Right. Okay.
And I know this, I'm repeating what Teresa said, but something, it's like, well, yeah, that's brilliant. Why wouldn't you do that? Teresa, when their son was doing virtual learning, and Teresa, you're going to say this way better than I can, but they would record the sessions. So if he did miss it, he wouldn't have anxiety about it. He can go back and watch it again. I mean, I think that is like perfect, Don't worry.
I'm definitely suggesting that to his teacher. Yeah, absolutely. Because then I can come home and I can watch it with him. We can talk about it. We can stop it. We can pause it. We can have a discussion because he gets it. It's coming so fast at him. And then Wednesday is a shortened schedule. So each class, like they don't have to be until 10:30, but each class is only 25 minutes. And the first Wednesday, he just was like, I have no idea what just happened. So, that's definitely something I'm going to suggest probably tonight, send an email out to his case manager to make sure that happens.
One of the things that we did as a staff last year with our calming protocols was that as a staff, we developed our own as adults. And then we modeled for our students or could get it out and say, oh, when I'm in the green, this is what I do to help make I drink coffee, whatever it might be. When I'm in the blue, this is where I am. And one of the other things that I love that Katie Dart pushed really hard last year is the thought that these strategies must be portable. that
Right.
it can't be that you are using all of these big pieces of equipment or big tools or whatever, that we really want our students to be out in the community. Of course, once all of this COVID business is over, but really having those opportunities and utilizing those strategies outside of the home, outside of the classroom, and once again, a lifelong skill.
Yes.
So,
I
and
don't have a crash pad at home, so.
Yes.
Yeah.
right.
I had a few different ideas for you. I would probably kind of contact talk to your teacher first, get with them and talk to them about modification on time. You know, what does that look like? You know, they're giving you the set straight answer as to what their protocol is, but we could potentially look at a modification for him.
Okay.
The second thing I would do is I would contact a counselor. I would contact a parent mentor. I would be contacting people to engage in setting up some social supports for him, like a student mentor that called every day for lunch on Wednesday.
Yes,
and checked in, said, hi, you know, mom isn't home, mom's working. So I just want to call, what you think about math, you know, and they're eating lunch together for, you know, 10, 15 minutes. Have that set up in the schedule so he knows on Wednesday I'm going to have lunch and I'm looking forward to that.
Right.
And then I would also set up, like you said, he was calling you every time, all the time. You know, problems come up, yes, but I would flip that. I would say, do you know that mom is going to call you if you can work with your boss to set up a schedule, every day at 11 o'clock, I'm calling you. I'm checking in on you. Don't you worry. So maybe he can hold his anxiety till 11 o'clock because he knows mom is going to call at 11. And then guess what? Before she goes home and gets in the car, I will call you. We will check in and I love you and, you know, whatever that is. But those are set in stone that you can always say if there's some sort of emergency, if it, you know, I will call you then, don't you worry. But set that up, set that, you know, a parent mentor. You know, we have parent mentors in schools. Engage that conversation with, how can I be a better parent? How can you help me? Can you help me? I'm working, you know, so involve with a passion, the need to engage community within the school district. You know, maybe grandma calls every month on the 30th, and maybe his friend will call every first Tuesday. So you're taking that aloneness, that time where he's away from you, far from that. You know, and every night, you know, teach crock potting. You know, that's something that can happen in the morning. He can smell it all day long.
True. And he loves to eat. He's a 17-year-old boy, so he loves to eat. So
I'm telling you, my son loves eating. But I'm telling you, it's all about the crock pot.
Right, I love it. Throw everything in there and it's done by dinner. Yes.
But so I hope those ideas help.
They have helped. Thank you very much. This was very helpful. Thank you all.
This is probably going to sound crazy, but we use the timer on our television a lot. You know, the parental controls on the TV. So when I wasn't home, my daughter knew that the TV was going to go off at 8:30 in the morning and she had to go to school.
Nice.
So I wasn't there to remind her, but she always liked to watch her Nickelodeon show in the morning. That was how she eased in. You know, she could get her own breakfast and everything. She knew where it was, but she'd get lost in her TV show and she'd forget to go to school if I was at work. Right. Even though my husband was there, he'd forget to tell her to go to school. So God bless his heart. Right. But I mean, so, we'd set the timer, and you know, those parental controls where it goes off at a certain time. And so my kids learned really fast. If they tried to figure out the code, they would lock the TV up like for the entire day. You know, it would never go back on. But you can set those parental controls. So like, hey, the TV is going to go on again between 11 and 12 for lunch, or, you know, you can take a break. And then when it shuts off, she knew she needed to go back to school. So it was really funny, but like just those little cues or those regular phone calls, or we would use the timer on her phone a lot.
I already downloaded that timer and I shared the app with
I mean like the calendar on her phone, you know, like set
reminders. That too, the alarms.
Yes, we'd set alarms. And I wrote in the chat, we try to Revibe. If anybody has ever tried Revibes, which are like these vibrating bracelets that you
I
can
heard
set
about that.
timing on and everything, they're really fantastic. My daughter kept taking it off and leaving it all over the house, but I have two, and I'm willing to just give them to whoever would actually use them because they're not cheap and they're just sitting in a drawer.
Yeah.
So let Anna know, or let Ann know if you really need a Revibe. And I got two.
Okay.
I know, you know, Shazia, you mentioned finding a project-based learning where he's interested and actually engaged in,
Yes.
throwing that out to the teacher as maybe like an option.
Mhm.
I think particularly, I think particularly when my kiddo was young, you could get them to kind of follow the schedule, you know. But once they got a little bit older, they really wanted to do what they wanted to do. So we really focused on doing projects that would incorporate what the teacher goals were, but at the same time, it gave him the ability to kind of choose what he wanted to do or examine a certain kind of topic or interest or hobby, whatever it is. And that was very powerful because it took away this kind of need for me to check in on him, and it kind of gave him the you know, that motivation that, hey, I want to do this for reason that I want to do it. And I thought that was, I found that very helpful to kind of find that high interest topic or project.
Nice. Yes.
I mean, it also stems to a career. I mean, when you do that kind of exploration on a remote learning, it stems to find that interest for that child. Like, hey, can we do a project? Like we did one on, it was on like Mustang Island. Have you ever heard of that, where there's lots of Mustangs free roaming, you know? And so it was a research project. We had to do, you know, 3 paragraphs and such, you know, which was kind of like humongous. But I asked it for extended time. I said, you know, can we have, you know, all the supports possible that I could ask for Ryan. And it made learning different. It was like we had a passion. It wasn't just like learn this subject and learn this and then do this and then do that. You know, so it was like, we're going to do that, you know, we're going to learn all about this project. So, you know, I think in a way, when you, like what Shazi was saying, is projects kind of sound like overwhelming. It doesn't have to be, but these are things you can throw out and try to help shape that learning for your son. So, okay, there we go.
Does anyone else have a question that they would like to pose to the panel? I have some questions, but I also feel that it's so wonderful to have these amazing group together. And if you have specific questions that you would like to ask, I would love you to be able to do that. If anyone wants to unmute and share a question, or I can go back to some questions that we already developed. I'll give you a minute or so to kind of think about what you might want to ask. Okay. Oh, go for it. Yes, please.
I'm a referral and support specialist at Summit DD, and I have multiple young children on my caseload, like kindergarten, 1st, 2nd grade, and some preschoolers that can't even get to the point where they're going to sit in front of the computer. Do you have any advice on like those very beginning stages of how to get them to engage virtually?
I have a couple thoughts. One, play. I think starting with something that they are interested in doing at the moment. It might not be your play, but if it's their play, that's where you're starting. And then bringing things in that way. Creating situations where there's a problem and we have to solve it. And so we have to learn what to do. Another piece, I think, is taking the work to the student. During the professional session, Teresa talked about how, you know, when Ryan had a difficult time sitting for the entire class and wanted to walk around, she brought the work to him, and he completed it that way. So I think looking past the traditional model of what learning looks like is really important in these situations, because otherwise you're going to fight a losing battle.
I saw in the chat, someone said, let them stand. We had a student, young student, who has an intense interest in shoes, varying forms of shoes, flip-flops and sandals and high heels and tennis shoes and all of those things. And so it was flipping the shoes all around and having that really awesome conversation about shoes. And who doesn't want to talk about shoes, people? I mean, seriously. You know, we have fingernail polish colors. Like, I feel like anything that we can do in that one moment that I can grab them, and if I know that they have 4 intense interests, then all 4 of my first sessions are always going to be about, I'm going to start with that intense interest, I'm going to have some middle time and spent on intense interest, or my entire session, every story, every social thing that we're concentrating on or focusing on, communication, everything is going to be based on that intense interest, because that's the way I function. And kids want to think about the things that they love to think about, because I think it's so challenging in this format to have the person-to-person aspect of learning, that when you can use that intense interest to keep their focus or to get them to even look at the screen, we just practice looking at the screen, showing them something that they loved. That's what we focused on for weeks, and just really providing yourself with the same amount of grace that you were providing the families and those that you are supporting, I think is our most important thing, because this is trial and error, and it's difficult. This is not an easy gig for those of us who spent 14 hours a day doing virtual things to support families, because that's our love and that's what is most important to us. It is not an easy situation, but I think using intense interests were huge for me.
My daughter had a brilliant teacher who would let her tell a joke at the beginning of every class. And it only took a minute, but she wasn't engaged until she got to tell her joke. And, you know, jokes were one of her big things. You know, at that particular time, those were one of her special interests. And it only took a second. She was mainstreamed at the time, but yeah, just tell a joke. Where there's a great teacher named John Spencer, who I put his stuff on the Wakelet that I'm trying desperately to share, the extra page that won't share, but promise I'll try to get it to you before we leave. But he does these video writing prompts, which are so incredible. And so like one of them was, you know, you accidentally get shrunk to 2 inches tall and you're stuck in your classroom for the weekend. How are you going to survive it? You know, and even my 12-year-old, who has no interest in anything because he's 12, you know, if you've ever had a 12-year-old boy, you kind of get that. But like, he was like, oh my gosh, we could do this and this and this and this and this and this. And he started going crazy. And I was like, all right, John Spencer just sold me, because if you can engage my 12-year-old, my daughter got into it, like little kids get into it. So I think finding fun ways to incorporate, and this is one of my passion areas, is visuals in online classes, where a lot of people just talk to the students and don't put pictures up to get them as a prompt to get them talking. You know, put a mystery picture up, they have to guess what it is that's relevant to that day's lesson, or you know, show a video prompt at the beginning to get them thinking, or, you know, just, it can't just be the teacher going, hey everybody, how you doing? Good, good. Like, they're not going to participate. And even those little kids who have special needs on top of it, you know, then you just, I love the shoes. I think I would bring my shoe to show them. Yeah.
For little ones, I'd really take a hard look at your environment and how you've got that set up. I think I would create having some bigger things that can you can kind of move with the child, have your tennis shoes on. So those beanbag chairs, those kind of long benches, you're giving parameters in that room and letting them move, but slowly you're kind of corralling them towards like a set close. Instead of them running the pace of the room, you're kind of moving with them. So get a clipboard, get paper and pencil with you, so you're able to give them choices. If you're giving object to object choices, but you're moving with them as they're walking back and forth, and you're kind of creating that environment, kind of a block maybe. They're having to move to slow their pace down. I would use a lot of auditory components for you, using your voice to calm them, using, kind of an unexpected voice, and use your auditory calming, that auditory voice to help gauge that student into learning. If they're not going to look at the screen, the only mobile way in which you're going to instruct is either through tactile manipulatives, if you can get your hands on it, but your voice is going to be a key component into calming that student, whispering, bringing them near you, engaging them, and you have to become the stim. You have to become the most exciting thing in that room and engage them in order for learning to take place. So I used to have this mentality where I was like, you need to come over here and sit down right now. And I was struggling with the behavior. So you have to become and beat that stim. If they're stimming all over and they're looking at all these things, then you need to be visually maybe drawing something on your clipboard. So use mobile objects with you. Have pockets, have an apron with things shoved in your apron, so that you're mobile and you're working with that child, and try to corral that environment. Turn the lights off, make it as calm as possible.
So believe it or not, we only have 5 minutes left. Hello, this has been my best 1 hour and 55 minutes all week. Thank you so much for everyone sharing your amazing thoughts and what we've learned and our challenges and providing. It feels like a bit of grace and a bit of support for I hope that's way it feels for you, because it feels that way for me. Does any of the panelists have a final thought that they would like to share? Or Mary Helen or Anne or Joan or anyone, please, if you have anything you'd like to share.
I just want to thank everybody for coming tonight, and a special thank you to the panelists. I know I listened to this a week ago for professionals, and I'm still blown away by all the new resources and information. I feel like I learned so much from this. This was so wonderful and helpful. Thank you, Sabrina, for facilitating as well. I really appreciate that. I think we would have time for one more question, but I also want to note that we've asked, I did drop an eval link, so I would love it for folks to tell us what you thought of tonight, what other questions you have, what we could do in other Let's Talks. So if there's a last burning question on anyone's mind, I think we'd have a moment to take that yet. And if not, then I'm going to say thank you again to all of you for coming. Thank you, special thank you to our panelists, to Katie, to Molly, to Shazia, Teresa, Sarah, Sabrina, thank you so much. And thanks to Joan and Anne for also helping out with the chat. This was just wonderful. Thank you all, and have a great night.